Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I've got some absolutely wild Reddit stories for you. Alright, let's jump into the first story. So this story starts about 6 months ago when I got engaged to my now husband. We were both thrilled, started planning immediately, and honestly, everything was going pretty smoothly until my sister found out about our wedding date. Now, some context. My sister and I have always been competitive. Not in a cute way either. We're talking full-blown rivalry since we were kids. She always had to one-up everything I did. I got into college. She got into a better one. I got a promotion. Suddenly she's starting her own business. You get the idea. When I told my family we'd set the date for June 15th, my sister went completely silent. Then 2 days later, she announced she was also getting married. Same year. 3 weeks before my wedding. To a guy she'd been dating for 7 months. I was annoyed, but whatever, right? Her wedding, her choice. Except then she started making it weird. She'd call my mom crying about how I was stealing her thunder by having my wedding so close to hers. Mind you, I'd announced my date first. She literally scheduled hers after mine specifically to be first. But here's where it gets wild. About 2 months before her wedding, she started asking me for help. Could I help with decorations? Could I ask my florist for a discount? Could my husband's band play at her reception for free? Every single request was framed like I owed her something. I helped where I could because I'm not a monster, but I drew the line at the band thing. They're professionals, not a favor bank. She completely lost it. Told me I was selfish, that I'd always been jealous of her, that I was ruining her special day. Then she uninvited me to her wedding. My own sister uninvited me. Via text message at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was honestly relieved. One less thing to deal with before my own wedding. But my mom was devastated and kept begging me to apologize. For what? I genuinely don't know. But family pressure is real. So her wedding day arrives. I didn't go, obviously. Spent the day at a spa with my bridesmaids instead. But my mom was there, my dad, my aunts, everyone. And according to the family group chat that was blowing up my phone all day, it was a disaster. The flowers were wrong. The caterer brought chicken instead of fish. Her photographer got food poisoning and left halfway through. The band she'd hired last minute, instead of my husband's group, knew maybe 4 songs total. It rained during the outdoor ceremony, even though the forecast said sunny all week. And apparently, she had a full meltdown. Crying, screaming, the whole thing. At one point, she apparently yelled that this wouldn't have happened if I just helped her properly. My mom said she could hear her from the parking lot. Now here's the thing. I felt bad. I genuinely did. Nobody wants their wedding to be a disaster. But then I found out why everything went wrong, and suddenly I didn't feel bad anymore. My cousin pulled me aside a few days later and told me that my sister had been so focused on making sure her wedding was bigger and better than mine that she'd rushed every single decision. She'd fired her original florist for being too expensive and hired someone off Craigslist. She'd switched caterers 3 times trying to get a cheaper deal. The photographer was a friend of a friend who'd done photography before, but had never actually shot a wedding. She'd sabotaged her own wedding, trying to outdo me, and then blamed me when it fell apart. My wedding, 3 weeks later, went perfectly. Beautiful weather, amazing food. The band was incredible. Everyone had a great time. And my sister didn't come. She claimed she was too emotionally exhausted from her own wedding to attend. My mom tried to guilt me about it, but honestly, I was relieved. Here's where I might be the problem, though. After my wedding, I posted photos on social media. Normal thing to do, right? Well, my sister saw them and sent me a 10-paragraph text message about how cruel I was for flaunting my perfect wedding when hers had been ruined. She said I should have postponed or toned it down out of respect for what she'd gone through. I told her that was insane and blocked her number. Now half my family thinks I'm heartless, and the other half thinks she's delusional. My mom wants us to go to family therapy together. My dad told me to just let it go and give it time. But I don't think I'm wrong here. She created her own problems, blamed me for them. uninvited me to her wedding, skipped mine, and then got mad that mine went well. At what point does her behavior become not my responsibility? The family group chat is still a war zone. My aunts are picking sides. My grandmother keeps sending Bible verses about forgiveness to everyone. My cousin sent me a meme about sibling rivalry that honestly made me laugh for 5 minutes straight. So that's where things stand now. We haven't spoken in 4 months. My mom brings it up every time I call her. And I'm just trying to enjoy being married while my sister apparently tells everyone who'll listen that I'm a terrible person. Looking back, maybe I should have just eloped. Let's move on to the next story. I work in a pretty standard office. Cubicles, fluorescent lights, a kitchen area with a fridge that's probably older than I am. It's fine. The job pays well, and most of my coworkers are decent people. Except for Derek. Derek started about 8 months ago. Nice enough guy at first, seemed normal, did his work, but then lunches started disappearing from the fridge. Not every day, but consistently enough that people noticed. Someone's sandwich gone, someone's leftovers missing, a yogurt here, a salad there. Everyone assumed it was random at first. Maybe someone grabbed the wrong lunch by accident. It happens. But it kept happening. And it was always the good lunches. Nobody sad. Desk salad ever went missing. It was always the homemade pasta, the fancy sandwiches, the stuff that clearly had effort put into it. I meal prep on Sundays. I'm talking nice meals, stuff I actually look forward to eating, teriyaki chicken, homemade fried rice, pasta dishes, really good sandwiches. I put them in the fridge Monday morning, and by Thursday, I'd had 3 lunches stolen in 2 weeks. The third time it happened, I snapped. I made this incredible Thai curry over the weekend, portioned it out perfectly, labeled it clearly with my name, came back from a meeting at noon, opened the fridge, and it was gone. The empty container was in the trash. I asked around. Nobody knew anything. But then I walked past Derek's desk and smelled curry. The exact same curry I'd made. He had the audacity to have the container sitting right there on his desk, eating my lunch while I stood there watching him. When I asked if that was my lunch, he said he'd found it in the fridge, unlabeled, and figured it was up for grabs. Except it had my name on it, in permanent marker. On the lid, he literally had to have peeled off the label or ignored it completely. I reported it to HR. They said they'd look into it, but nothing happened. Derek kept stealing lunches. Mine, other people's, didn't matter. He was like a lunch-stealing machine, so I decided to handle it myself. I made a special lunch. It looked incredible. Beautiful container, nicely arranged, smelled amazing. It was a burrito bowl with rice, beans, chicken, all the toppings. The kind of lunch that would make anyone jealous. But the chicken? That chicken was seasoned with something special. Ghost pepper hot sauce. Not a little bit, a lot, mixed thoroughly into every single piece. I'm talking the kind of hot sauce that comes with a warning label, the kind you're supposed to use 1 drop at a time. I used half the bottle. Then I added more hot sauce to the rice and the beans, and I made a special sauce for the top that was basically just pure capsaicin mixed with sriracha and habanero paste. The whole thing was a chemical weapon disguised as a burrito bowl. I put it in the fridge Tuesday morning with a big label that said, "Do not eat extremely spicy," on it. Because I'm not a monster, I warned him. Around noon, I heard screaming from the kitchen area. Derek had taken my lunch, ignored the warning label, taken it back to his desk, and taken a massive bite. He was crying. Actually crying. His face was bright red. He was chugging water, which of course made it worse. He was gasping and wheezing and making noises I didn't know humans could make. Someone called the office first aid person. They thought he was having an allergic reaction. He kept yelling that his mouth was on fire, that he couldn't feel his tongue, that someone had poisoned him. When they found the empty container on his desk, they asked whose lunch it was. I very calmly said it was mine, that I'd labeled it with a warning, that I always make my lunches extremely spicy, and anyone who'd eaten my food without permission should have known that. Derek tried to say I'd booby-trapped my lunch, HR got involved again, but here's the thing. It was my lunch. In the shared fridge, clearly labeled. With a warning, I didn't force him to eat it. I didn't offer it to him. He stole it. HR reviewed the situation and determined that while my lunch was inadvisable, I hadn't technically done anything wrong. Derek, on the other hand, had admitted to taking food that wasn't his, multiple times. He got written up, had to send an apology email to everyone he'd stolen food from, and he had to bring in lunch for the entire office for a week as restitution. Best part? My lunches never got stolen again. Neither did anyone else's. Derek started bringing his own sad sandwiches from home and eating them quietly at his desk. I still meal prep every Sunday. Still put my lunches in that same fridge. And now they're always there when I come back for them. Funny how that works. A few people asked me for the recipe. I gave them a much milder version. I'm not trying to actually hurt anyone, I just wanted my lunch back. Derek doesn't make eye contact with me anymore, which is fine by me. Alright, let's get into the next one. I've had my dog Cooper for 6 years. Got him from a shelter when he was 2, and he's been my best friend ever since. He's a medium-sized mutt, probably some kind of lab shepherd mix, and he's the sweetest, most loyal dog you've ever met. Goes everywhere with me when possible, sleeps at the foot of my bed, knows every command I've ever taught him. My mom has never liked Cooper. She thinks dogs are dirty, that having one in the house is gross, that I'm too attached to him. Every time she visits my apartment, she makes comments about dog hair on the couch, or how it smells like dog, even though I clean constantly and Cooper gets groomed regularly. Last month, my mom offered to watch Cooper for a week while I went on a work trip. I was hesitant because of her attitude toward him, but she insisted. Said she wanted to make an effort, that she knew he was important to me, that it would be good bonding for them. I should have trusted my instincts. I dropped Cooper off at her house on Sunday, left detailed instructions about his food, his medication for his allergies, his routine, everything. My mom smiled and said not to worry, that they'd be fine. I called Tuesday to check in. She said everything was great. Cooper was being good, eating well, no problems. I felt relieved. Maybe I'd been wrong about her. Thursday, I called again. No answer. Tried again a few hours later. Nothing. Sent a text. No response. By Friday, I was worried. I cut my trip short and drove straight to her house. 4-hour drive, didn't even pack my stuff properly. Just threw everything in my car and left. When I got there, my mom answered the door looking nervous. I asked where Cooper was. She said he was fine, but that we needed to talk. Turns out, my mom had decided that I relied on Cooper too much, that having a dog was holding me back from finding a husband and starting a family, that I needed to grow up and stop treating an animal like a child, so she'd given him away. She'd posted an ad online. Free dog to good home. Gave away my dog without asking me, to complete strangers. I completely lost it. Started yelling, crying, demanding to know where he was. She refused to tell me at first, saying it was for my own good, that I'd thank her later. I called the police. They said it was a civil matter since I'd voluntarily left the dog in her care. I called every shelter within 50 miles. Nothing. I posted on every lost pet page on social media, drove around her neighborhood showing people pictures of Cooper on my phone. Finally, my mom's neighbor who'd seen me freaking out knocked on the door and said she'd overheard my mom talking about giving the dog to a family 2 towns over. She didn't have an address, but she remembered my mom mentioning the family's last name. I found them on social media, messaged them immediately. They responded within an hour saying they just picked up a dog matching Cooper's description 2 days ago, that a woman had told them he was a family dog they could no longer keep. I drove to their house. When I pulled up, Cooper was in their front yard. He saw my car and went absolutely ballistic, barking, jumping, pulling toward me. Their kids were playing with him, and they looked so confused when I got out crying and Cooper nearly knocked me over trying to get to me. The family was actually really understanding. They said they'd thought something was off about the whole situation because the dog seemed so well trained and clearly bonded to someone. They gave him back immediately, wouldn't even let me pay them for the food they'd bought. I drove back to my mom's house with Cooper in the passenger seat, his head in my lap the whole way. Walked in and told her she would never see me again, that what she'd done was unforgivable, that she'd stolen my dog and lied about it. She tried to justify it, said she did it because she loves me and wants what's best for me, that I'm 32 and single and spending all my time with a dog instead of dating, that I needed a wake-up call. I told her that even if she thought she was helping, she'd destroyed any trust between us, that she'd traumatized both me and Cooper, that her obsession with me getting married was her problem, not mine. Haven't spoken to her since. She's called probably 50 times, sent long text messages about how I'm overreacting, how she's sorry but I need to understand where she was coming from, how I'm breaking her heart by cutting her off. My dad called me and said I should forgive her because she's family. I asked him if he knew what she was planning. He admitted he did, but thought she'd change her mind. Now I'm barely talking to him either. My brother thinks I'm being too harsh, that yes, what she did was wrong, but she's our mom, and she meant well. I told him that intent doesn't erase impact, and that if he thinks giving away someone's dog is acceptable under any circumstances, we have nothing to talk about. Cooper's been extra clingy since we got back, follows me everywhere, even more than before. I think he was stressed being in a strange place and then being given away. We've been doing extra training sessions and longer walks to help him feel secure again. I'm not backing down on this. Some things you don't come back from, and stealing someone's pet is one of them. I don't care if she's my mom. I don't care if she thought she was helping. What she did was cruel and manipulative, and I'm done. Let's dive into the next story. I live in a pretty standard suburban neighborhood. Nice houses, quiet streets, the kind of place where everyone waves at each other and pretends to like their neighbors. For the most part, it's fine. Except for my neighbor Tom. Tom moved in 3 years ago and immediately made it clear he takes Christmas very seriously. I'm talking Clark Griswold, levels of serious. The first year, he had lights on every surface of his house, inflatable decorations covering his entire lawn, a massive Santa on his roof, the whole deal. It was bright enough to see from space. I didn't mind. It was a bit much, but whatever makes you happy, right? I put up my own modest decorations, some lights on the porch, a wreath on the door, a small tree in the window, normal stuff. Then Tom came over and told me my decorations made his house look bad, that I needed to step up my game, or not decorate at all because the contrast was ruining his display. I laughed because I thought he was joking. He was not joking. Year 2. Tom went even bigger, added musical lights that played Christmas songs, added more inflatables, added a full nativity scene, added lights to his trees. His electric bill must have been insane. And again, he came over to complain about my decorations being too plain. This year, I decided to do something about it. If Tom wanted a Christmas light competition, he was going to get one. I started planning in October, researched professional display techniques, watched YouTube tutorials, joined online forums about Christmas decorating. I was going to make Tom regret ever complaining about my lights. I started putting up decorations the day after Thanksgiving, lights on every inch of my house, not just strands of lights, but professional-grade LED strips that could change colors and patterns. I bought a programmable controller so I could make them dance to music. Then the lawn decorations. I went to every store within 30 miles and bought every good inflatable they had. Snowmen, reindeer, Santa, elves, penguins, a whole winter wonderland. Arranged them strategically for maximum impact. Then the roof. I built a full sleigh with reindeer that lit up and looked like they were flying. Took me 3 weekends and almost falling off my roof twice, but it looked incredible. Then the trees. Wrapped every tree in my yard with lights, different colors for each tree, made them fade and pulse in patterns. Then, the finale. I bought a projector that displayed moving snowflakes, Christmas images, and messages on the front of my house. Professional quality, the kind they use for big displays. I turned everything on December 1st at exactly 6 p.m. The whole display synchronized to music playing from outdoor speakers. It was spectacular. Cars were stopping to look. Kids were pointing. People were taking pictures. Tom came outside to see what the commotion was. His face when he saw my house was priceless. His jaw literally dropped. He stood there for a solid 5 minutes just staring. Then he went back inside, and I didn't see him for 2 days. Day 3, Tom's house got new decorations. A lot of new decorations. He'd clearly gone out and panic bought everything he could find. But here's the thing, it looked terrible. He just threw stuff up with no planning, no coordination. Lights tangled together, inflatables blocking each other, no cohesive theme. It looked like a Christmas decoration store had exploded on his lawn. My display still looked amazing. Coordinated, professional, impressive, but tasteful. The neighborhood started talking about it. Someone made a poll on the neighborhood Facebook group asking whose display was better. I was winning by a landslide. Tom saw the poll and lost his mind, posted a long rant about how Christmas wasn't a competition, and people should decorate from the heart, not for attention. The irony was apparently lost on him. Then Tom did something I didn't expect. He reported me to the HOA for excessive decorations, claimed my display was a distraction to drivers, a noise nuisance, and violated some obscure rule about temporary structures. The HOA came to investigate, looked at my display, checked their rules, measured my decorations. Everything was within regulations. I'd made sure of that before I started. They found nothing wrong. Then they went to Tom's house and found about 15 violations. His decorations were blocking the sidewalk. Some of his lights were strung across the property line into the common area. His inflatables were improperly secured and kept blowing into the street. His music was louder than allowed by the noise ordinance. He got fined, had to remove multiple decorations and fix the violations within a week, or face more fines. I didn't gloat, didn't have to. My lights spoke for themselves. Tom's display got smaller and sadder as he removed the violations. Mine stayed perfect. The neighborhood voted my house as the best display. A local news station came out and featured me in a segment about holiday decorations. I got interviewed on TV and everything. Tom stopped talking to me completely. Would turn and walk the other way if he saw me outside. Wouldn't make eye contact. It was honestly kind of sad, but also he'd brought it entirely on himself. Christmas came and went. My display was a massive hit. Hundreds of people drove by to see it. I handed out candy canes to kids who came by. It was genuinely fun. January 1st, I took everything down efficiently and stored it properly. Tom's decorations stayed up until mid-January and looked awful the whole time, all saggy and sad in the winter weather. Now Tom's selling his house. I saw the for sale sign go up last week. My wife thinks I went too far and drove him out of the neighborhood. I think he drove himself out by being weirdly competitive about Christmas decorations and then trying to weaponize the HOA against me when he lost. Either way, I'm already planning next year's display, thinking about adding animated figures, maybe a full light show choreographed to a whole album of Christmas music, maybe a fog machine for atmosphere. If Tom's still here next Christmas, he's going to regret ever starting this war. Let's move to the next one. I started a new job about 4 months ago at a marketing firm. Good company, decent pay, nice office. The team seemed friendly during interviews. Everything looked great. First day, I met my desk neighbor, Cheryl. Mid-40s, been at the company for 12 years, seemed nice enough at first. But within the first hour, I realized Cheryl was a gossip. Not just casual office gossip either. Hardcore, malicious, constantly stirring the pot gossip. She spent my entire first day telling me about everyone in the office. Who was sleeping with who was getting fired, who was incompetent, who was a kiss-up. None of it was relevant to my job. None of it was appropriate to tell a brand new employee. But she couldn't help herself. By day 3, I realized Cheryl's goal was to make me her gossip buddy. She'd lean over the cubicle wall every 10 minutes with some new piece of information or question about someone. She wanted me to engage, to gossip back, to become part of her network of drama. I'm not about that life. I like my jobs to be drama-free. I show up, do my work, go home. I don't care about office politics or who said what about whom. But Cheryl wouldn't take hints. I'd give short answers, change the subject, put on headphones. Nothing worked. She'd just keep going. Started inviting me to lunch specifically to gossip about people. Would text me after work with updates about coworkers I barely knew. Week 2, I snapped. Not externally, internally. I made a decision that was either genius or insane, and I still haven't decided which. I decided to pretend I barely spoke English. Now, some context. My parents are from Poland. I grew up bilingual, speaking both Polish and English fluently since I was a kid, but I look ethnically ambiguous enough that people can't immediately place where I'm from, and my last name is very clearly Polish. So during a conversation where Cheryl was trying to get me to gossip about our manager, I just stared at her blankly and said in a heavy accent, "Sorry, my English is not so good. I do not understand." She looked confused, asked if I was serious. I nodded and said, "I am still learning. Professional English is difficult." From that moment on, I committed to the bit, hard. Anytime Cheryl tried to gossip, I'd respond in broken English, pretending not to understand her implications. She'd ask leading questions about people, and I'd just smile and nod, and say something like, "Yes, he is a very nice person." She tried asking me about my weekend. I'd give basic, simple answers. I stay home, very relaxing, nothing she could work with. She tried asking about my personal life. I live alone, is quiet. I like quiet. The best part? Everyone else in the office assumed I was actually ESL. My manager asked if I needed any language support resources. HR offered translation services for any documents I found confusing. I had to keep declining politely while maintaining the accent. Meanwhile, my work was perfect. Emails were flawless, reports were well written, presentations were articulate, but I claimed my writing was better than my speaking, that I had more time to translate and check my work when typing. Everyone accepted this explanation. Cheryl got frustrated. Without a gossip buddy at the desk next to her, she had to work harder to spread her drama. She'd still try with me sometimes, but I'd just smile and say, "I am sorry, this is too fast for me." And she'd give up. 3 months into this act, something amazing happened. The company hired another Polish employee. Actual recent immigrant, thick accent, still learning English. His desk was near mine. Cheryl immediately came over and said, in a loud, slow voice, "You can help him with English. You both speak Polish." I said, "Oh yes, of course," in my fake accent. Then I turned to him, and we had a full conversation in rapid, fluent Polish. He was so happy to meet another Polish speaker. We became actual friends. Here's where it got complicated. He kept speaking to me in Polish at work, which was fine, except now I had to maintain my fake accent when speaking English in front of everyone while being completely fluent in Polish. It was like running 2 different programs at the same time. One day, we're in the break room speaking Polish, and Cheryl walks in. She can't understand us, but she's clearly annoyed that we're having conversations she can't eavesdrop on. She actually said, "It's rude to speak other languages at work." My Polish co-worker, bless him, said in perfect English, "We are on break. We can speak whatever language we want." Cheryl huffed and left. Later tried to report us to HR for exclusionary language. HR told her that was not a thing and to leave us alone. The breaking point came last week. I was in a meeting presenting a major campaign strategy. Completely fluent, professional, articulate presentation. No accent, no hesitation, perfect English. Because I'd genuinely forgotten to maintain the accent, I was too focused on the presentation. Halfway through, I saw Cheryl's face. She'd realized. Her eyes got wide. Her mouth opened slightly. She knew. After the meeting, she cornered me in the hallway. "You're not ESL. You speak perfect English. You've been faking this whole time." I dropped the accent completely and said, "Yeah, Cheryl. Because every time I tried to be polite about not wanting to gossip, you ignored me. So I made it literally impossible for you to gossip with me. It worked great until I forgot to keep pretending just now. She was furious, called me manipulative, said I'd made her look stupid, threatened to tell everyone. I said, "Go ahead. Tell them that you were so aggressively gossiping at me that I pretended not to speak English for 3 months to get you to leave me alone. See how that makes you look." She hasn't spoken to me since, hasn't gossiped in my direction once, doesn't even make eye contact. My Polish coworker thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever heard. Made me tell him the whole story over beers. Now we still speak Polish at work just because we can, and it annoys Cheryl. My manager found out eventually. I came clean when he asked directly. He laughed for about 5 minutes, then told me it was the weirdest solution to an office problem he'd ever heard, but technically I hadn't violated any policies. He did ask me to please just use normal communication methods in the future. Some coworkers think it's hilarious. Some think I'm insane. Some are now questioning every interaction they had with me over those 3 months. But Cheryl leaves me alone now. And honestly, worth it. All right, time for the next story. I love food, always have. I'm not a competitive eater or anything. I just have a really good appetite, and I'm a bigger guy who works out a lot, so I eat a lot. It's never been a problem. Most restaurants are happy to have a customer who orders multiple entrees and actually finishes everything. There's this buffet place about 20 minutes from my house. All-you-can-eat Asian fusion buffet. Sushi, hibachi, noodles, soups, desserts, the whole spread. Pretty good quality for a buffet, reasonably priced. I've been going there about twice a month for 2 years. Always had a good experience. Here's the thing. I actually ate my money's worth. The buffet was $25 per person. For that price, I'd easily eat $40 or $50 worth of food if you counted it up. But that's the deal with buffets, right? Some people eat light and some people eat heavy. It averages out for the restaurant. I always followed the rules. Didn't waste food. Finished everything on my plate before getting more. Was polite to staff. Tipped well. I was a model customer except for the fact that I ate a lot. One night I went there with a few friends. We got a table, headed to the buffet, started eating. I was on maybe my 3rd plate of sushi when the manager came over, asked to speak with me privately. I followed him to the side, confused. He told me that I was no longer welcome at their restaurant, that I was banned. Effective immediately. I asked why. He said I ate too much, and that I was costing them money, that their business model didn't account for customers who ate as much as I did, that I was abusing the all-you-can-eat policy. I pointed out that all you can eat means exactly that, all you can eat. There's no fine print about limits, no sign saying all you can eat unless you eat too much. It's literally the entire premise of a buffet. He said it didn't matter, that he had the right to refuse service to anyone, that I needed to leave and not come back. My friends were mortified. I was pissed, but didn't want to make a scene. So I left. Didn't even get to finish my meal. My friends stayed and ate, but said the whole thing was awkward and they felt bad. I went home and immediately left a review on every platform I could find. Google, Yelp, Facebook. Explained exactly what happened, that I was banned for eating too much at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Didn't exaggerate, didn't lie, just stated facts. The reviews went viral in my local area. People thought it was hilarious. The restaurant's page got flooded with comments and questions about how much food is too much food at an all-you-can-eat restaurant. People were posting memes. It became a whole thing. The restaurant responded to my review, claiming I was harassing staff and being disruptive. Complete lie. I responded with the truth and even offered to show the credit card receipts, proving I'd been a regular customer for 2 years, with no issues until that night. More people piled on. The restaurant's rating dropped significantly. They started losing business. People would show up just to ask the staff about the guy who got banned for eating too much. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the owner. Not the manager who banned me, but the actual owner. He apologized profusely, said the manager had overstepped, said I was welcome back any time, and my next 3 visits would be free. I asked if the manager was still there. He said yes, but that he'd been spoken to about the incident. I said I'd think about it. I didn't go back for a month. Let them sweat it out. The viral attention had died down, but their reviews were still tanked. They'd had to post multiple apologies on social media. When I finally went back, the manager saw me walk in, and his face went pale. He immediately came over and apologized, said he'd been having a bad day, and took it out on me, said it would never happen again. I accepted the apology, but made it clear I'd be watching. If there were any more issues, I'd take my business elsewhere permanently. Here's the kicker. Now when I go there, the staff treats me like royalty. Extra attentive service. Fresh food brought out specifically for me. The sushi chef makes special rolls when he sees me coming. They're bending over backwards to make sure I'm happy, and I still eat the same amount I always did. 3 or 4 plates of sushi, a couple plates of hibachi, some soup, probably too much dessert. Nobody says anything. Nobody gives me weird looks. They just let me eat in peace like they should have been doing all along. I still leave good tips, still follow all the rules. And my reviews? I updated them to reflect how the restaurant made things right. It's only fair. But I'll never forget being banned from an all-you-can-eat buffet for eating all I could eat. The irony is almost poetic. Let's get into the next story. I had a roommate situation last year that still feels surreal when I think about it. I moved to a new city for work and found a room for rent in a nice apartment. 2 bedrooms, shared common spaces, reasonable rent. The girl renting out the room seemed normal enough. Let's call her Jessica. Jessica worked from home as some kind of social media consultant. Fine, whatever, not my business. She had a cat named Princess. Cute cat, no problems there. Everything seemed great for the first month. Then Jessica asked if I was okay with her getting an emotional support animal. I said sure, assuming she meant another cat or maybe a small dog. I like animals, no big deal. She came home 3 days later with a peacock, a real, living, full-sized peacock named Mr. Beauregard. I stood in the living room staring at this massive bird as Jessica explained that her therapist had approved it as an emotional support animal for her anxiety. She had paperwork and everything, legal documentation that this peacock was medically necessary. I asked where she was planning to keep it. She said he'd have free range of the apartment since confining him would cause distress. The peacock screamed. If you've never heard a peacock scream, imagine the sound of a demon being exorcised, mixed with a car alarm. It's unholy. And Mr. Beauregard screamed a lot. First week with Mr. Beauregard, I learned that peacocks poop constantly, everywhere, large poops. Jessica would clean them up eventually, but there were hours where I'd come home to find peacock droppings all over the living room. Second week, Mr. Beauregard decided my room was his territory, would stand outside my door at 6 a.m. screaming until I let him in. If I didn't let him in, he'd scream louder. If I did let him in, he'd strut around my room, knock things over, and poop on my floor. Third week, Mr. Beauregard attacked me. I was eating a sandwich on the couch, and he decided he wanted it. Came at me with his talons out, making aggressive bird noises. I had to lock myself in my room until Jessica got home and retrieved him. I tried talking to Jessica multiple times. She said Mr. Beauregard was adjusting and that I needed to be patient, that he was essential for her mental health, and I was being discriminatory by complaining about an emotional support animal. Fourth week, I came home to find Mr. Beauregard had destroyed my laptop, knocked it off the table somehow, screen completely shattered, $1,400 worth of damage. Jessica said it was an accident and she wasn't liable because he's an animal and animals do things. I filed a complaint with our landlord. The landlord was sympathetic, but said that because Jessica had ESA documentation, he couldn't force her to remove the peacock without risking a discrimination lawsuit. He did, however, note that my lease didn't require me to tolerate damage to my personal property. I I started looking for a new place immediately, but couldn't break my lease without losing my deposit and paying a penalty. 5th week, Mr. Beauregard got into the bathroom while I was showering, stole my towel through the gap under the door. I had to drip dry and put on clothes while still wet because the peacock was standing guard outside the door with my towel. 6th week, I started documenting everything. Videos of Mr. Beauregard attacking me, photos of the mess, recordings of the constant screaming, time-stamped logs of when I couldn't sleep because of the noise. I called animal control. They said peacocks aren't technically illegal to own in our city, but they do a wellness check. They came out, determined Mr. Beauregard was healthy and being cared for, and left. Useless. 7th week. I contacted a lawyer, explained the situation. He said ESA laws were complicated, but that I had a case for creating an uninhabitable living environment. He wrote a formal letter to both Jessica and the landlord, outlining the issues and demanding either the peacock be removed or I be released from my lease with no penalty. Jessica freaked out, posted on social media about how I was trying to take away her emotional support animal. Her friends flooded my Facebook with messages calling me ableist and heartless. The landlord called me and offered to let me out of the lease early with my full deposit back if I agreed not to pursue legal action. I took the deal, found a new apartment within a week, a studio, no roommates, no peacocks. Moving day, Jessica cried and said I was abandoning her during a difficult time. Mr. Beauregard screamed the entire time I was packing. It was the worst symphony I've ever experienced. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that the landlord ended up not renewing Jessica's lease when it came up. Apparently, other tenants in the building had been complaining about the peacock screams for months. She had to move back in with her parents, and Mr. Beauregard now lives outside in their backyard like a normal peacock should. I now have a very specific question I ask potential roommates. Do you have any pets? Or plans to get any pets? And if so, what species? I'm not taking any chances. Living with a peacock for 2 months taught me that emotional support animal laws are way too broad, and that some people will abuse any system if it means they get what they want. But mostly it taught me that peacocks are terrible roommates, and I never want to hear that scream again as long as I live. Let's move on to the next one. I had a best friend for 7 years. We met in college, bonded immediately, did everything together. She was funny, outgoing, always up for adventure. We had the same sense of humor, liked the same music, had similar goals, perfect friendship. Let's call her Amy. Amy had this very specific personality. She was super into indie music, vintage fashion, artsy coffee shops, philosophical conversations about life. She was vegetarian for ethical reasons. She talked about traveling the world and living a minimalist lifestyle. She seemed so sure of who she was, and I admired that about her. We stayed close after college, both moved to the same city, hung out constantly. She was in my wedding party. I was planning to ask her to be godmother to my future kids, that level of close. About 6 months ago, Amy started dating this new guy. Let's call him Mike. Mike was different from her usual type, very corporate, finance bro energy, into sports and craft beer and grilling, not the artsy musician types she usually dated. I figured opposites attract, didn't think much of it. But then Amy started changing. First, she started eating meat again, said she'd evolved her thinking about vegetarianism. Okay, people change their diets, whatever. Then she stopped wearing her vintage clothes, started dressing more preppy, said she was maturing her style. Fine, fashion changes. Then she started listening to completely different music, top 40 stuff, nothing indie at all. Said she'd been limiting herself before. Then she got really into football. Started hosting watch parties and using sports terminology. Amy, who once told me she thought sports were a waste of time and couldn't understand why people cared. Over a few months, she basically became a completely different person. And here's the thing, she seemed to think I wouldn't notice. Like I'd just accept this total personality transplant and not ask questions. I asked her about it, said it seemed like she was changing a lot to match Mike's interests. She got defensive, said she was just growing as a person and I should be supportive. Then came Mike's birthday party. Amy invited me, said it would be fun. All of Mike's friends would be there. I went because I'm a good friend, even though by this point I barely recognized her. At the party, I ended up talking to Mike's sister. Nice woman. We hit it off. She asked how long I'd known Amy. I said 7 years, that we were best friends. She got this weird look on her face. Said, "That's interesting, because Mike says Amy was really into sports and business and all the same stuff he's into when they met. That's why he was attracted to her." I said no. Amy was into vintage fashion and indie music and vegetarianism. Her whole thing was being artsy and philosophical. Mike's sister laughed and said that didn't sound like the Amy she'd met at all, that Amy had spent the last 6 months talking about how she'd always loved football and had always been into fitness and business. I felt sick. I went home early, didn't even say goodbye to Amy. I started thinking about our entire friendship, and I realized I couldn't actually remember Amy having any strong opinions that weren't borrowed from whoever she was dating or hanging out with at the time. In college, she dated a guy in a band. That's when she became super into indie music. Before that, in her first year, she dated a different guy and had been really into whatever he was into. I couldn't even remember what because she changed so completely after they broke up. Her entire personality had always been a reflection of whoever she was closest to. She was a chameleon. And I'd never noticed because I'd known her through so many different phases and thought it was just natural growth. I felt like I'd been friends with a stranger for 7 years, like I didn't actually know who Amy really was, if there even was a real Amy underneath all the borrowed personalities. I confronted her about it, told her what Mike's sister had said, asked her point blank who she really was, what she actually liked when she wasn't trying to match someone else. She broke down crying, said she didn't know, that she'd been doing it so long she couldn't remember what was real anymore, that she just wanted people to like her, and the easiest way to make people like you is to be like them. I asked about our friendship, about all the things we'd bonded over. She admitted that she'd been mirroring me too, that she'd noticed what I was into and made herself into someone who liked the same things. 7 years of friendship, and it was built on a lie. She hadn't been my best friend. She'd been performing the role of my best friend. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't be friends with someone when I didn't know who they actually were, that she needed to figure herself out before she could have genuine relationships with anyone. She begged me not to abandon her, said I was the only real friend she had. I said that couldn't be true because she'd never been real with me, so how could we be real friends? I haven't talked to her in 5 months. She still texts sometimes. Apologies, explanations, promises to find herself. I don't respond. Mike dumped her about 2 months ago. Apparently he figured out the same thing I did, that he wasn't dating a real person, just a mirror that reflected his interests back at him. I heard from someone that Amy's seeing a therapist now, working on identity issues and people-pleasing behaviors. I hope that's true. I hope she figures out who she is. But I can't be part of that journey. The betrayal is too deep. Every memory I have of our friendship is now tainted by the knowledge that she was performing the whole time. I can't trust any of it was real. It's made me paranoid about other friendships. Made me wonder if people actually like me or if they're just reflecting my personality back at me. Made me question how well I really know anyone. The worst part? I miss her. Or I miss who I thought she was. The friendship I thought we had, but that person never existed, so what am I even missing? A ghost? A performance? I'm still processing it all. Might need therapy myself at this point. 7 years is a long time to invest in a friendship, only to find out it was one-sided the whole time. If you have a friend who seems to change completely with every relationship, pay attention. You might be friends with someone who doesn't actually exist. All right, let's jump into the next story. This is embarrassing to admit, but about a year ago, I accidentally joined a cult. In my defense, they didn't advertise themselves as a cult. They called themselves a wellness community, and I was going through a rough patch, and they seemed nice. I'd just gone through a bad breakup, wasn't loving my job, Felt kinda lost. A coworker invited me to this free wellness workshop, said it had helped her a lot. Figured why not? What's the worst that could happen? The workshop was in a nice community center, about 20 people there. The leader, this woman named Harmony, definitely not her real name, was charismatic and warm. She talked about mindfulness, self-care, finding your authentic self. Pretty standard wellness stuff. Everyone was friendly. They had good snacks. At the end, Harmony invited us to join their ongoing community meetings, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, plus weekend workshops. Free for the first month. Again, figured why not? I had nothing else going on. Week 1 was great. We did meditation, journaling exercises, talked about personal growth. Everyone was supportive and positive. It felt good to be part of a community. Week 2, they introduced some weirder concepts, talked about energy work and vibration alignment. Little bit out there, but I'd heard of that stuff before. Kept an open mind. Week 3, Harmony started talking about how toxic most of society is, how our families and old friends might be holding us back from our true potential, how we needed to be careful about who we spent time with. Red flag, but I missed it. Week 4, they asked us to commit to the community more fully, suggested we move into their communal living space, said it would accelerate our growth to be surrounded by like-minded people 24/7. This is where I started getting uncomfortable. But Harmony had a way of making you feel like your discomfort was just resistance to positive change. Like if you were questioning things, it meant you weren't committed to your own growth. I didn't move in, but I did start going to more events. They had this way of filling up your schedule, so you didn't have time for anything else. Morning meditation before work, evening meetings, weekend retreats. They'd get upset if you missed anything, say you were backsliding. About 3 weeks in, they started asking for money, not demands, but suggestions, donations to support the community, investment in your own growth, paying for special one-on-one sessions with Harmony. Every meeting, someone would mention how much the community had helped them and how important it was to give back. Then came the really weird part. Harmony announced that she'd been having visions, that she'd been chosen as a vessel for higher consciousness, that she could communicate with spiritual entities that could guide us to enlightenment. She started doing these channeling sessions where she'd go into a trance and speak in a different voice, give people personal messages from their spirit guides. It was theatrical and bizarre, and everyone was eating it up. I remember sitting there thinking, this is insane. This is clearly nonsense. But then looking around and seeing everyone else completely bought in made me question my own judgment. Maybe I was missing something. The breaking point came during a weekend retreat. We were 2 hours from the city, at some rural property the community owned. 30 of us there. They took our phones for the weekend, said it was for a digital detox to help us be present. Saturday night, Harmony did a big channeling session, really intense, lots of candles and incense and dramatic pauses. She received a message that some people in the group were not fully committed, that their doubt was creating energetic blockages for everyone else. She started pointing people out, publicly calling them out for not being committed enough, not donating enough money, not recruiting enough new members, not attending enough events. People were crying, apologizing, promising to do better. Then she pointed at me, said I was harboring doubt, that I was still too attached to my old life, that I needed to fully surrender to the community or I'd drag everyone else down with my negative energy. Something in me snapped. This was a manipulation. This was a cult. I was in a cult. I stood up and said I was leaving. Harmony said I couldn't leave. We were in the middle of a sacred ceremony. I said I didn't care. I wanted my phone back and I was leaving. She got aggressive. Said if I left, I'd be abandoning my spiritual growth, that I'd regret it, that I was making a huge mistake. Other people started surrounding me, not physically blocking me, but creating this wall of disappointed faces and pleading voices. I pushed through them, found where they'd locked up our phones, demanded mine back. The guy guarding them said only Harmony could authorize returns. I said I'd call the police if he didn't give me my property back immediately. He gave me my phone. I walked out into the dark rural property, called an Uber, even though I was literally in the middle of nowhere, and sat on the side of the road for 45 minutes waiting for it. Best 45 minutes of my life, because I was out. The next week, I got bombarded with messages from Harmony, from other members, from my coworker who'd originally invited me, all saying the same things. I was making a mistake. I was running from my truth. I was welcome to come back anytime. They were praying for me. I blocked everyone associated with the group, every single one. My coworker at work tried to talk to me about it. I told her in no uncertain terms that she'd recruited me into a cult, and I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. She reported me to HR for being hostile. HR investigated, found out what kind of group it was, and actually gave her a warning about recruiting coworkers into outside organizations. She quit a month later, probably to spend more time with the community. I looked up the group online after I left, found a Reddit thread about them. Turns out they'd been operating in different cities under different names for years. Always the same pattern. Start with wellness stuff, slowly isolate people, take their money, build dependency. There were stories from people who'd lost tens of thousands of dollars to them, people who'd cut off their entire families, people who'd lived in the communal housing and described it as basically a compound with strict rules and constant surveillance. I'd gotten out early, 3 weeks. Some people had been in for years. The whole experience messed with me for months, made me paranoid about any kind of group activity, made me question my judgment about people and situations. I felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner, but I also learned something important. Cults don't look like cults at first. They look like exactly what you need at that moment. They're designed to appeal to people who are vulnerable, searching, open to new experiences. And the transformation from wellness community to cult is so gradual that you don't notice until you're in too deep. If I'd moved into that communal housing, if I'd cut off my friends and family like they were suggesting, if I'd invested more money, I don't know if I would have gotten out. So now when I see ads for wellness communities, transformative experiences, spiritual groups that promise to change your life, I run. I run fast and I run far. And if anyone tries to take my phone for a digital detox, I'm out immediately. That's my hard line now. I'm fine now. Went to actual therapy, worked through it, learned to trust my judgment again. But I'll never forget those 3 weeks when I was part of a cult and didn't even know it. Let's dive into the next story. I rented an apartment for 2 years. Standard lease, decent place, reasonable rent. When I moved in, I did what everyone tells you to do. I documented everything, took photos and videos of every room, every wall, every surface, noted all existing damage in writing to the landlord. There was a lot of existing damage. The walls had holes and scuffs. The carpet was stained. The kitchen cabinets were chipped. The bathroom tile was cracked. Nothing major, all cosmetic stuff, but definitely visible. My landlord acknowledged all of it in writing, said it would be addressed eventually, but that I shouldn't worry about it. None of it would be charged to me when I moved out. Fast forward 2 years. I got a job in another city, gave proper notice, found a new place, packed everything up, cleaned the apartment thoroughly before moving out. We're talking deep cleaned, scrubbed floors, wiped down walls, cleaned inside all the appliances, left it in better condition than I found it. Did the move-out walkthrough with the landlord. He looked around, said everything looked good, shook my hand, said I'd get my security deposit back within 30 days as required by law. 30 days passed. No deposit, no communication. I called him. He said he was still processing it. 45 days. Nothing. I sent an email. No response. 60 days. At this point, legally he was required to have returned the deposit or provided an itemized list of deductions. I sent a formal letter via certified mail stating that he was in violation of the lease and state law, that I expected my full deposit plus interest within 7 days, or I'd take legal action. 3 days later, I got a letter from him with an itemized deduction list for $3,000. My deposit was $1,500, so according to this list, I owed him $1,500 on top of losing my entire deposit. The list was insane. Charges for repainting entire apartment, $800, replacing carpet throughout, $1,200, repairing wall damage, $400, replacing kitchen cabinet doors, $300, fixing bathroom tile, $300. Every single item was damaged that had existed when I moved in, every single one, and I had proof. I pulled out my move-in photos and videos, matched every charge to pre-existing damage that I'd documented and he'd acknowledged, made a detailed response packet with side-by-side comparisons, move-in photo showing hole in wall, his charge for repairing that exact same hole, move-in photo showing carpet stain, his charge for replacing that carpet, everything. I sent this packet to him with a letter stating that I would not be paying anything, that I expected my full deposit returned immediately, and that if he did not comply, I would be filing in small claims court and reporting him to the State Housing Authority. He responded by doubling down, said the documentation didn't matter because normal wear and tear during my tenancy would have caused those issues anyway. Completely nonsensical argument, but he was sticking to it. So I filed in small claims court, cost me $45 to file, requested my deposit back, plus the maximum penalty allowed under state law for improper withholding, plus court costs. The court date was about 6 weeks later. I prepared thoroughly, printed all my evidence, organized it chronologically, made a clear timeline of events, had my lease, all written communications, all photos and videos, everything. The landlord showed up with no evidence, just his itemized list, no photos of the apartment after I moved out, no receipts for any work done, no proof of anything. The judge looked at my evidence, looked at his lack of evidence, asked him if he had anything to support his claims. He said he'd been a landlord for 20 years and knew what damages were tenant-caused versus pre-existing. The judge asked if he'd documented the apartment condition when I moved out. He said no, he didn't need to because it was obvious. The judge asked if he had any photos from before I moved in. He said no, but the tenant, me, had photos, and they showed damage. The judge asked why he would charge me for damage I documented before moving in. He gave some rambling answer about how it got worse during my tenancy. The judge cut him off, said that without any documentation of the apartment's condition when I moved out, he had no basis to make any claims about damage I caused. That my move-in documentation, combined with no move-out documentation, meant the burden of proof was entirely on him, and he'd failed to meet it. Judgment in my favor. Full deposit return. Maximum penalty under state law for bad faith withholding, which was twice the deposit amount, plus court costs. Total, $4,500. The landlord's face went purple. He tried to argue. The judge told him the decision was final, and he had 30 days to pay or face additional penalties. He paid in 29 days. Check arrived, certified mail. I deposited it immediately. But here's the best part. After the court case, I reported him to the State Housing Authority with all my documentation. They investigated and found he'd been doing this to multiple tenants, charging them for pre-existing damage, improperly withholding deposits, not providing itemized lists on time. He got fined heavily and had to pay back deposits to several other former tenants. Then I left reviews on every apartment rating site, warning people about his practices. Detailed, factual reviews with dates and case numbers. His properties now have terrible ratings, and from what I've heard, he's struggling to rent them. Some people think I went too far with the reviews and the Housing Authority report, that I'd already won in court and gotten my money, so I should have let it go. But I don't think so. He was systematically scamming tenants, young people, people who didn't know their rights, people who didn't have the time or resources to fight back. Someone needed to stop him. The whole experience taught me several things. 1. Always, always, always document everything when you move into a rental. Photos, videos, written lists, timestamps, everything. It's the only protection you have. 2. Know your state's landlord-tenant laws. Most states have strict requirements for deposit returns and serious penalties for violations. Use them. 3. Don't be afraid to go to small claims court. It's designed for exactly these situations. You don't need a lawyer, the filing fee is minimal, and judges tend to side with tenants when landlords can't provide evidence. 4. Bad landlords rely on tenants not knowing their rights or not wanting the hassle of fighting back. Don't give them that satisfaction. I'm in a new apartment now. Different city, different landlord. First thing I did on move-in day? Full documentation, photos of everything, video walkthrough, detailed written lists sent to the landlord and property management company via email, so I have proof of the date. I'll never get caught by that scam again. And hopefully my experience helps other people avoid it too. Time for the next story. I worked for a mid-sized tech company for 3 years. Good job, decent pay, normal corporate environment. Every year they did this big charity drive, encouraged employees to donate, matched donations up to a certain amount, made a huge deal about how much money we raised for various causes. They'd send out these emails about how proud they were of our charitable culture, how we'd raised $100,000 for children's hospitals, $50,000 for homeless shelters, $75,000 for animal rescues. Really patted themselves on the back about it. Last year, I was on the committee that organized the charity drive. Got to see behind the scenes for the first time. And something didn't add up. The numbers they were announcing didn't match the numbers we were actually raising. Not even close. We'd raised maybe $40,000 total from employee donations and company matching, but they were announcing we donated $150,000. I asked the VP who oversaw the program about the discrepancy. She said the additional money came from corporate contributions, separate from the drive. Made sense, so I didn't think much of it. But then I was working on an unrelated financial report and saw the actual charitable donation numbers for the company. For the entire year, including the charity drive, we donated $60,000 total. Not the $300,000 plus we'd been announcing publicly. I went back to the VP, asked for clarification. She got uncomfortable, said I must be looking at the wrong numbers, that the charitable donations were handled through a different accounting system. I checked. There was no different accounting system. All charitable donations were recorded in the main financial system, and the total for the year was $60,000, meaning the company was lying about how much they were donating. They were taking credit for money that didn't exist. I looked into it more, found press releases from the company talking about their charitable giving, found posts on social media, found internal communications to staff, all claiming donation amounts that were 3 to 5 times higher than what was actually donated. It was all fake. They were using the charity drive as a PR tool, while actually donating a fraction of what they claimed. I was furious. I donated my own money believing it would be matched. Other employees had done the same. We'd all been used to make the company look good while they lied about their contribution. I collected all the evidence, financial reports, press releases, emails, everything. Put together a detailed document showing the claimed donations versus actual donations for the past 3 years. Then I had to decide what to do with it. I could go to the CEO, risk being fired or retaliated against. Maybe nothing would change. I could go to the media. Definitely get fired. Maybe create change, but also burn my career. I could report to the IRS or other authorities. Long process, uncertain outcome. Or I could leak it anonymously and let the internet do its thing. I chose option 4. I created a burner email account, sent the document to several tech news sites and business journalists. Detailed, factual, fully documented. Then I waited. 3 days later, an article came out. Major tech news site. Tech company inflates charity donations by 400%. Had all my evidence, had reached out to the company for comment, had verified the numbers independently. The company's response was a disaster. First they denied it, then they said it was an accounting error. Then they said the numbers included in-kind donations, like employee volunteer hours. Each excuse contradicted the last one. The story went viral, Other outlets picked it up. Social media roasted them. Employees started speaking up about how they'd been pressured to donate, with promises of matching that apparently never happened. The backlash was intense. Clients started asking questions. Partners reconsidered relationships. The company's stock price dropped. The board got involved. Within 2 weeks, the CEO and 2 VPs were forced to resign. The company issued a public apology and committed to donating the full amount they'd claimed over the previous 3 years. Actual receipts and proof required. They also hired an external firm to audit all their charitable claims going forward. Set up a transparent system where employees could see exactly where donations went. I watched all of this happen from my desk, pretending to be as shocked as everyone else. Nobody ever suspected I was the leak. I'd been careful, used public documents where possible, never accessed anything that could be traced back to me. A few months later, the company did another charity drive. This time, they showed real-time updates of donations, provided receipts, matched donations publicly and transparently, raised about the same amount as always, but this time it was real. Some people think what I did was wrong, that I should have tried internal channels first, that I damaged the company's reputation unnecessarily, that I could have cost people their jobs. But here's my take. They were committing fraud. Maybe not technically illegal fraud, since they weren't taking anyone's money directly, but moral fraud. They were lying to employees, to customers, to the public. They were exploiting people's goodwill for PR points. Someone had to expose it, and if I'd gone through internal channels, it would have been buried. That's how these things work. Companies don't police themselves, especially not on things that make them look bad. I still work there. Got a promotion last year, actually. The new leadership is better, more transparent, more ethical, actually seems to care about doing the right thing. And every time we do a charity drive now, I know the money is real, that when we say we donated $100,000, we actually donated $100,000. That's worth whatever risk I took. Sometimes you have to be the whistleblower, even if it's scary, even if there are consequences. Because if good people don't speak up when they see wrongdoing, nothing ever changes. Let's move on to the next one. I bought my first house 2 years ago. Small starter home in a neighborhood with an HOA. I knew HOAs could be annoying, but figured it was worth it for a nice neighborhood. The HOA had rules about lawn maintenance, external appearance, that kind of thing. Pretty standard. Keep your grass cut. Don't paint your house weird colors. No major renovations without approval. All reasonable. I have a green thumb. Love gardening. One of the main reasons I wanted a house was so I could have a real garden. When I moved in, I started planning. I read through the entire HOA covenant, every single page, looked for any rules about gardens, found nothing prohibiting them. The rules mentioned lawns and landscaping, but nothing specifically about vegetable gardens or flower beds beyond. Keep your property well maintained. So I started my garden, front yard, along the side of the house where there was good sun. Raised beds, properly constructed, filled with good soil. Planted tomatoes, peppers, herbs, some flowers for color. It looked nice, neat, organized, well maintained. Not some chaotic mess. I was proud of it. Spent hours out there every week tending it. Neighbors would walk by and compliment it. Kids would stop and ask questions about the plants. It was becoming a nice little community thing. Then I got a letter from the HOA, violation notice, demanded I remove the garden within 14 days or face fines. I called the HOA president, asked what rule I was violating. He said vegetable gardens weren't allowed in front yards. I asked where in the covenant it said that. He said it fell under aesthetic standards, and vegetable gardens didn't meet those standards. I pointed out that the covenant didn't define aesthetic standards beyond well-maintained, and my garden was definitely well-maintained. He said it was up to the board's discretion. I asked for a formal hearing to dispute the violation. That was my right, according to the HOA bylaws. He seemed annoyed, but agreed. The hearing was 3 weeks later. I prepared like I was going to court. Printed relevant sections of the covenant, Brought photos of my garden from multiple angles, showing how neat and attractive it was. Brought photos of other front yards in the neighborhood that were less well maintained than mine, but hadn't received violations. I also did research on HOA law in my state, found that HOAs have to enforce rules consistently and can't make arbitrary decisions based on personal preference. Found several cases where HOAs lost lawsuits over unclear or inconsistently enforced aesthetic standards. At the hearing, I presented my case, showed that the covenant had no specific prohibition on vegetable gardens, showed that my garden was well maintained and attractive, showed examples of actual violations in the neighborhood that weren't being enforced. The board looked uncomfortable. The president tried to argue that regardless of what the covenant said, they had the authority to maintain neighborhood aesthetics. I countered that they had to enforce written rules consistently, not make up new rules on the fly. One board member asked if I'd be willing to move the garden to the backyard as a compromise. I said I would if they could show me where in the covenant it required vegetable gardens to be in backyards. They couldn't. They voted 3-2 in favor of upholding the violation, so I hired a lawyer. Cost me $500 for a consultation and a strongly worded letter. The letter outlined why the violation was unenforceable, cited relevant case law, and suggested that if the HOA proceeded with fines, I would file suit and seek legal fees. The HOA backed down immediately, rescinded the violation, sent a letter saying upon further review my garden was acceptable, but then they scheduled a special meeting to amend the covenant to specifically prohibit vegetable gardens in front yards going forward. I showed up at that meeting. So did about 15 other homeowners who'd heard about what happened and were pissed. Turns out several people had been wanting to start gardens, and this whole thing had gotten people angry. We spoke against the amendment, argued that vegetable gardens were sustainable, that they looked fine when properly maintained, that homeowners should have the freedom to use their property as they saw fit within reason. The board tried to push it through anyway, but amendments required a vote of all homeowners, not just the board. They put it to a vote. It failed. 70% of homeowners voted against it. The board was furious. The president made some speech about how the neighborhood standards were declining and property values would suffer. Several board members resigned in protest. New people got elected to the board. Younger homeowners, people who were tired of the old guard's controlling attitude. The whole dynamic of the HOA shifted. Now my garden is still there, bigger than ever. I added more beds, more variety. Several neighbors started their own gardens after seeing mine. There's talk of starting a neighborhood sharing system where people can trade produce. The HOA still exists and still enforces reasonable rules. But the culture changed. Less arbitrary enforcement, more focus on actual problems, more respect for homeowners' autonomy. All because I refused to back down over a tomato plant. People ask if it was worth the stress and the lawyer fees. Absolutely. It wasn't really about the garden, it was about the principle, about not letting a power-hungry HOA board make up rules and bully people into compliance. If I just removed the garden, they would have kept doing the same thing to other people. Someone had to push back, and now I have fresh tomatoes all summer. So really, I won on multiple levels. All right, let's get into the next story. My family does Thanksgiving at my parents' house every year. Whole family comes, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. It's usually pretty pleasant. Normal family stuff, some minor drama, but nothing major. Last year's Thanksgiving was different. My brother, who I'll call Tom, had been dating his girlfriend Sarah for about a year. She seemed nice enough. A bit high maintenance maybe, but Tom was happy, so whatever. We're all sitting around the table, about 20 people total, halfway through dinner. Turkey, stuffing, the whole spread. Everyone's eating and talking and having a good time. Tom stands up suddenly and taps his glass, asks for everyone's attention, says he has an announcement. I figured he was going to announce an engagement. That would be fast after only a year of dating, but not crazy. I was prepared to be happy for them. Instead, Tom said they were already married, had eloped 3 weeks ago. Surprise. The table went silent. My mom's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. My dad just stared. Tom seemed to think this was a fun surprise, like we'd all be excited. Sarah was beaming next to him, showing off her ring. My mom asked why they didn't tell anyone. Tom said they wanted it to be just for them. No stress, no family drama. But they were excited to finally share the news. My aunt asked why they couldn't have told people before. Tom said it was their decision and their wedding, and they didn't owe anyone an explanation. Tension rising. My mom started crying. Not happy crying, hurt crying. She left the table and went to her room. My dad told Tom that was really inconsiderate, that they'd stolen a major family moment. Tom said it wasn't about the family, it was about him and Sarah. Sarah chimed in saying they knew the family would try to control everything if they'd known about a wedding, so this was easier. Basically admitted they assumed we'd be difficult. My sister pointed out that nobody had even met Sarah's family. Tom said Sarah's family wasn't in the picture, which was news to all of us. Made the whole thing weirder. Thanksgiving dinner completely derailed. Half the family trying to be supportive, half clearly upset. My mom wouldn't come out of her room. My dad was barely speaking. I pulled Tom aside later and asked what he was thinking. He got defensive, said I was being unsupportive, that this was supposed to be a happy moment and the family was ruining it. I told him that dropping a "we're already married" bomb in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner with 20 people was terrible timing and terrible communication. That of course people were upset. He said if people really loved him, they'd just be happy for him regardless of when or how he got married. Which, okay, fair point philosophically. But practically, you don't blindside your entire family with major life news in the middle of a holiday dinner and expect everyone to immediately celebrate. The rest of the weekend was awkward. My mom barely spoke to Tom. My dad kept trying to smooth things over, but you could tell he was hurt too. Extended family left earlier than usual. The whole thing was a disaster. Afterwards, Tom sent a group text saying he was disappointed in how the family reacted to his happy news, that he'd expected support and got judgment instead. My sister responded that it wasn't about judgment, it was about communication and consideration. That springing it on everyone like that was selfish. Tom said we were making his wedding about us instead of about him. And okay, maybe he had a small point. Maybe we should have just been happy for him and not made it complicated. But also, actions have consequences. If you make major life decisions and hide them from your family, you can't be surprised when they feel excluded and hurt. This whole thing caused a rift that's still not fully healed. Tom and Sarah don't come to family events as much. When they do, there's weird tension. My mom is polite to Sarah, but you can tell she's hurt that she wasn't included in any wedding planning, or even told it was happening. My dad tried to have a heart-to-heart with Tom about it. Tom said he didn't regret anything and would do it the same way again, that his relationship with Sarah was more important than managing family feelings, which, again, philosophically fine. But relationships exist in context. Family is part of that context. You can't just opt out of considering other people's feelings and then be mad when there are consequences. I'm still processing how I feel about it. Part of me thinks Tom and Sarah had every right to elope and announce it however they wanted. It's their life, their marriage. But part of me thinks the way they did it was needlessly hurtful. They could have told people privately after. They could have at least prepared my parents. They could have not done it at Thanksgiving dinner in front of 20 people. The whole thing made me think about how we balance personal autonomy with family relationships. Where's the line between it's my life and I don't have to explain myself, and my choices affect people who care about me and I should consider that? I don't have a good answer, but I know last Thanksgiving was supposed to be a nice family holiday, and instead, it turned into a dramatic mess that we're all still dealing with. This year's Thanksgiving is coming up. Tom and Sarah said they might not come because they don't want a repeat of last year. My mom said that's their choice, but she'd like them there. My dad's trying to convince everyone to just let it go and move forward. We'll see what happens. Family's complicated, Sometimes there's no right answer, just different versions of wrong. Let's dive into the next story. I've been at my company for 5 years. Started in an entry-level position, worked my way up to mid-level, always got good reviews. I'm good at my job. I know I'm good at my job. My manager tells me regularly that I'm good at my job. About 6 months ago, we hired someone new to the team. Same role as me, same level, same responsibilities. Let's call him Brad. Brad and I became work friends pretty quickly. Similar sense of humor, both into the same sports. Easy to talk to. We'd get lunch sometimes, chat about work stuff, normal coworker friendship. One day, about 3 months into Brad working there, we're having lunch, and somehow the conversation turns to money. I don't even remember how it started. But Brad mentions his salary. He makes $85,000 a year. I make $45,000 a year. Same job, same level, same responsibilities. He makes almost double what I make. I tried to keep my face neutral, but I must have reacted because Brad asked if I was okay. I said fine, just surprised. He asked what I made. I told him. His face went pale. He said that couldn't be right, that we had the same job title. I said I knew, but that was my salary. We both kind of sat there in shocked silence for a minute. Brad asked how long I'd been there. I said 5 years. He'd been there 3 months. He said there was no way that was fair or legal. I said I didn't know if it was illegal, but it was definitely not fair. After lunch, I went back to my desk and did research. Looked up salary discrimination laws. Looked up company policies. Looked at Glassdoor to see what others in similar positions made at other companies. Turns out, Brad's salary was market rate. Mine was significantly below market rate. I'd been underpaid for years and didn't know it because the company culture was super secretive about compensation. We were actively discouraged from discussing salaries with each other. I stewed on it for a few days. Got angrier the more I thought about it. 5 years of good reviews. 5 years of taking on extra projects. 5 years of being told I was valued. And I was making half of what the new guy made. I scheduled a meeting with my manager. Came in prepared with market research, my performance reviews, everything. Told her I'd learned that my salary was significantly below market rate, and I needed a raise to bring me in line with comparable positions. She got uncomfortable, said compensation was complicated, said there were budget constraints, said she'd have to talk to HR. I pressed, asked if she thought my work was worth $85,000 a year. She said yes. Asked why I wasn't being paid that then. She didn't have a good answer. She said she'd see what she could do. Meeting ended. 2 weeks later, she came back with an offer. A raise to $55,000, $10,000 increase, presented like they were doing me a huge favor. I asked why I was still being offered $30,000 less than Brad for the same job. She said Brad had negotiated hard when he was hired, and I hadn't. That it wasn't about the value of the work, it was about negotiation. I said that was bullshit, and we both knew it. That penalizing employees for not negotiating aggressively was a way to systematically underpay people, particularly women and minorities who are socialized not to negotiate. She didn't disagree, but said her hands were tied. This was the best she could do. I asked if Brad knew about the discrepancy. She asked me not to discuss compensation with other employees. I pointed out that was illegal under federal labor law. She backed off. I took a few days to think about it. The raise would help, but I'd still be significantly underpaid. And I'd always know that the company valued me less than Brad despite me being there longer and performing at the same level. I started applying to other jobs. Within 3 weeks, I had 2 offers, both in the $75,000 to $80,000 range. I accepted one and gave notice. My manager was shocked, asked what it would take to make me stay. I said $85,000 plus back pay for the years I was underpaid. She said that was impossible. I said then there was nothing to discuss. HR called me in for an exit interview, asked why I was leaving. I was honest, said I'd been significantly underpaid for years, that I'd discovered newer employees were making almost double my salary for the same work, and that when I brought it up, I was offered an insulting raise that still left me underpaid. The HR person took notes and said nothing. Asked if there was anything they could do. I said, fix your compensation practices so this doesn't happen to other people. On my last day, Brad and I got lunch one more time. He felt terrible about the whole thing. I told him it wasn't his fault. He'd negotiated what he was worth. The company had chosen to undervalue me. That was on them, not him. He told me that after our conversation about salaries, he'd talked to other people on the team. Turns out I wasn't the only one being underpaid. 2 other women on the team were in similar situations, making significantly less than male colleagues with the same roles. He'd actually gone to management about it, said it seemed like discrimination. Management had not been happy about him talking to people about compensation. I told him to be careful, that companies don't like whistleblowers, even when they're right. Started my new job 3 weeks ago, making $80,000 a year. Benefits are better. Culture seems healthier. People talk openly about compensation, and there's transparency about pay bands. Best part? My old company reached out last week asking if I'd consider coming back. Offered me $75,000. I said no. Even if they matched my new salary, I wouldn't go back. They'd shown me how they value employees. I learned that lesson. Brad texted me yesterday, said they'd done a compensation review after I left. Several people got significant raises. 2 managers got in trouble for the pay disparities on their teams. I'm glad things changed, but I'm also bitter that it took me leaving for them to fix the problem, that they could have paid me fairly all along, but chose not to until there were consequences. The whole experience taught me to always know your market value, always talk to coworkers about compensation, always negotiate, and never assume your company has your best interests at heart just because they say nice things during reviews. Money is how companies show what they value. Words are cheap. Pay attention to the money. Let's move to the final story. I had a solid friend group for about 4 years. Met them all in the same social circle, clicked immediately, became really close. 8 of us total. We'd hang out multiple times a week. Group chats constantly active. Birthdays, holidays, random weekends. We were always together. Then last summer, everything changed. It started subtly. Group chat got quieter. Plans would be made and I'd find out about them afterwards. People would be busy when I suggested hanging out. I figured everyone was just busy. Summer is hectic. People have stuff going on. But then I saw Instagram photos from the whole group hanging out, multiple times. Events I hadn't been invited to. I texted the group chat asking what was up, if I'd done something wrong. No response. I texted individuals. One person responded saying everything was fine, just been busy. But the photos kept coming. Beach trips, barbecues, game nights. Always the same 7 people. Never me. I was confused and hurt, but tried not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Then my birthday came. Every year the group did something big for birthdays. Dinner, party, something planned and coordinated. I'd helped plan 6 of these birthday celebrations over the years. My birthday came and went. One person texted me happy birthday. That was it. No plans, no calls, no group message. Nothing. I was devastated. These were supposed to be my closest friends, and they'd completely forgotten or ignored my birthday. I confronted one of them directly. Asked what happened. She got defensive, said everyone's busy. Life gets hectic. I pointed out they'd all found time to hang out with each other, just not with me. She admitted that there had been some group discussions about me, that some people felt I was too much sometimes, that I was too negative or brought the mood down. I asked for specific examples. She couldn't give any, just vague feelings. Said it wasn't personal, they just needed space. I was stunned. Nobody had ever said anything to me. No one had given me a chance to address whatever the problem was. They'd just collectively decided to phase me out. I asked the others. Got similar non-answers. Vague complaints about my energy or my attitude. Nothing concrete. Nothing I could actually respond to or fix. One person finally admitted the truth. There hadn't been any real problem with me, but two members of the group had started dating each other, and one of them didn't like me, so they'd slowly poisoned everyone else against me, made little comments, brought up old stuff I'd said or done in the worst possible light, created this narrative that I was a problem, and everyone else just went along with it. Easier to exclude one person than to confront the couple who were causing drama. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Years of friendship gone because two people decided they didn't like me, and the rest of the group had no spine. I removed myself from all the group chats, unfollowed everyone on social media, cut them all off completely. If they wanted me gone, fine. I was gone. The first few months were brutal. I'd lost my entire social circle overnight. Weekends were lonely. I'd see them doing stuff together online, and it hurt. I questioned everything about myself. Was I actually a terrible person? Had I done something wrong without realizing it? I went to therapy, talked through the whole thing. My therapist helped me see that I'd been in a toxic friend group that had scapegoated me instead of dealing with internal conflicts. That real friends communicate when there are problems instead of ghosting people. Slowly, I started rebuilding. Reconnected with some old friends from college, made new friends through hobbies and work, joined a recreational sports league and met people there. About 6 months after the ghosting, one of them reached out, said she missed me, that she felt bad about what happened, that the group had kind of fallen apart anyway after the couple broke up, and it got messy. I didn't respond. She'd had months to reach out when it mattered. She'd watched everyone exclude me and said nothing. Her regret now that the group was falling apart didn't change what she'd done. A few others tried to reach out over the following months, all with similar energy, nostalgic, apologetic, wanting to reconnect. I declined every time. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe I should have been the bigger person and forgiven them, but I couldn't. They'd shown me who they were when it was inconvenient to stand up for me. I believed them. It's been over a year now. I have new friends, better friends, people who communicate when there are problems, people who don't ghost at the first sign of conflict, people who actually value me. I still see the old group occasionally on social media. They've mostly drifted apart from each other too. The couple that started the whole thing broke up dramatically about 4 months after they pushed me out. Turns out, they were toxic to each other too. Part of me feels vindicated. Part of me is just sad about the whole thing. I lost years of friendship and memories, but I also learned important lessons about loyalty and communication and standing up for people. If your friend group can coordinate to exclude someone without any real conversation or confrontation, they're not a healthy friend group. That behavior doesn't stop with one person. Eventually, everyone becomes a potential target. I'm better off without them. I know that now. But it took a long time to believe it. The experience made me a better friend, though. Now when I have issues with people, I bring them up directly. I don't talk behind people's backs. I don't participate in group exclusion. I learned what kind of friend I don't want to be by watching what they did to me. So I guess in a weird way, getting ghosted by my entire friend group made me a better person. Would not recommend the experience, though. 0 stars. Very painful. But the growth that came after was necessary. And honestly, my new friends are better, more mature, more direct, more genuine. I should send my old friend group a thank you card for showing me what real friendship isn't. And that's it for this video. Thank you for listening.